Hello, Dapo. Good morning.
Hi, I assume that's Leslie. Good morning or good afternoon.
Okay, it's afternoon here.
Yeah,
So you're welcome. Great to have you. We're just waiting for some more people to join the call.
that's fine.
Thank you.
Hello, Dapo. Hello, Leslie. It's good to be here.
Hi, Mole. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here today. My name is Lacey Sampson, a Decagon trained software engineer and a technical product manager at Decagon. I want to specially welcome you all to Dev Connect London. This event is brought to you by Decagon to help recruiters and engineering managers position themselves rightly to attract exceptional talents to their team. These days, more business leaders are seeing that promoting and improving diversity in the workplace has considerable benefits for their company and for its employees. This is a crucial initiative, and Decagon has chosen to play an active role in it. Before we go on, I would like us to hear the CEO of Decagon, Chika Mobi, talk briefly about what Decagon is doing in this regard.
Decagon is addressing the underrepresentation of Black people in tech globally. We have started in Nigeria, which has youth unemployment of more than 50%. There are a lot of brilliant young people in Nigeria, but they lack access to one thing: opportunity. This is where Decagon comes in. We find the most brilliant young people and help them launch careers as software engineers. So far, 80,000 people have applied, and we've accepted the top 0.5%, about 400. These 400 decadevs, as we call them, go through a 6-month in-residence rigorous software engineering program. Starts with the fundamentals, algorithms, and data structures, and then moves on to one of 7 stacks. We have Java, C#, Python, Android, iOS, Golang, and full stack JavaScript. In addition to the technical skills, they also receive what we call the Agile Leadership Program. This focuses on both teaching them the Agile methodologies which are in demand today in software engineering, as well as leadership, communication, and emotional intelligence. Key skills for succeeding in tech today. We're really pleased to have a 100% placement rate so far with decadevs after graduation. You can find them in Nigerian companies like Access Bank, Sterling Bank, Carbon, Okra, Paga, Terragon, Simfix, and a host of others. And with our international partners like Varuna in Austin, Tribal in Atlanta, Return Queen in New York, and many other companies in America and Europe host decadevs currently.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome back. Today, we'll be discussing the topic, strategies for building a diverse talent pipeline. And with me here on the panel are 2 high-performing talents who will be sharing their insights on the topic. They would also tell us what attracted them to the companies where they are now and what strategies other recruiting managers and leaders can adopt to attract exceptional talents, especially from the minority groups. I'll let them do a brief introduction of themselves. Over to you, Dapo, please.
Bear with me, trying to unmute. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So my name is Dapo, and what I do presently is I work and I support people in building capabilities and also competencies, and that kind of translates into behaviors. Essentially, my title is Learning and Development Manager. But what I do is kind of working with individuals, teams, and also organizations that I support, particularly within the framework of my company, in actually helping them translate what it means to get them from point A to, say, point C or point Z, depending on where the goals and objectives are. And for me, that translates into what kind of behaviors they want to see in their employees, or what kind of behaviors you want to see, particularly if it's from a personal development standpoint. Yeah, so that's what I do. And I presently am based in the UK, supporting the organization here, but also kind of covering some European or global project as it may be. But then that's a bit about me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dapo. That was really interesting. Now we're going to come back to that. So Imole, please, over to you.
Okay, my name is Imole Oluyemi. I currently work with a company called Babylon Health as a product designer. Before that, I was based in Lagos, Nigeria. But currently, what I do with the company is I help to design and also ensure that we are building the right way in such a way that our users could actually make sense of the product and also get the best out of it in terms of experience. Babylon Health is a telehealth company to make it very simple, but we use a lot of artificial intelligence to make that work, and we are present in over 5 countries, including US, UK, and Canada. And so the products that we build are mostly, going to be used across all these platforms. And so building those products, I have to take all those things into consideration. And so, yeah, that's pretty much what I do at the moment. I'm based in London, UK as well. Yep.
Thank you, Imole. And like I said, we'll come back to this because we really want to hear more on what you do and how you got to where you are today. But meanwhile, for those just joining us, you're welcome again. And my name is Lacey Sampson, a product manager in Decagon. So for the sake of housekeeping, we expect to have the first round of the discussion for about 20 minutes and take a 5 minutes break to showcase our clients' testimonials. Then we continue for another 15 minutes. And we'll take another very short break, and then we'll have a Q&A session. So if you have any questions during the webinar, please type them into the chat window. We'll address them during the Q&A. Thank you. So our topic for today, like I said earlier, is strategies for building a diverse talent pipeline. I find it very interesting hearing different people talk about the topic of diversity because their different perspectives showcases the beauty of the concepts being discussed. And it would really be interesting to hear the stories of Dapo and Imole, especially because they represent the minority group where they are based, like you heard them say that they are based in the UK, and of course, Black people are not as much there. So let's come back to you, Dapo. I would like you to tell us more about your role. I know you mentioned a number of things, but I would just love you to talk more in depth. And then how did you get working at Babylon Health? Like, how did you learn about the job opening and all that?
All right. Thank you very much. So a bit about my role. I think just a slight correction is I work with UCB, which is it's called UCB Pharma. It's a global biopharmaceutical company. Again, biopharmaceutical because again, what we do is actually look at cutting edge technologies within pharma. That could actually come via instead of administering the drug orally, could you get that via a patch or some other means of actually, developing solutions and medicines that actually support patients or people who are living with some critical diseases. So that's where the company I work with. To answer your question of how I came across working with this company, a couple of years ago, I actually tried to study medicine in the University of Ife, which again is the university that I eventually graduated from. I dropped out of medicine after 4 years because I thought it wasn't really fulfilling what I wanted. And then I picked up just an ordinary course in geography. So I had a BSc in geography. But then what that allowed me to do was, once I dropped out of medicine, I had a bit of a space and time to actually do some other things and to explore a bit of myself and to figure out what exactly I wanted to do. In that process, I met this organization called IASEC. And I joined IASEC and I became very, very involved with IASEC, particularly with the talent development piece of IASEC or area of IASEC, where I was working with young people in universities who are undergraduates and kind of helping them develop. But then that also kind of exposed and expanded my mindset a bit, where I started working with some global teams, particularly around talent operations. I would graduate from university and then join IASEC for 2 years and lead Nigeria in the sense where I had about 1,500 people who were in the organization, and I was the president of ISEC in Nigeria at some point. Fast forward a bit, but I also got the chance to now start going to some countries, living in those countries between 2 to 6 months, or in some cases 2 years, just to kind of start understanding one, what exactly the realities are, understanding the concept, understanding some of the, the ethics that are actually, supporting the backbone of a culture, particularly, and then seeing how that influences leadership, influences decision making, influences even the, how people kind of look at development in a sense. So that gave me a bit of an exposure. So I think before I joined UCB, I'd lived in about 25 to 30 countries, doing those kind of volunteer experiences and projects and all of that. And I think what I then was looking for was I wanted to transition into, into a corporate company that one offered me that perspective of having that global mindset, but then also that could also challenge me to kind of stretch from, I understood a lot around leadership development, people, how people transit, how you build up teams and organizations from a volunteer context, but then again, what does that mean from a corporate context? But then then add a bit of that global piece to it. How do you then work out that? And I think this was one of the things I was looking for. Incidentally, UCB Pharma saw my profile through one of the channels that we had back then. And then I also saw their profile and we thought it was a great match. I got into the interview, fell in love with what the company offered and the role itself. And I think this was how I got scooped up and I joined the company or the organization in the US. So there was a part of my corporate career that I was in the US and I moved here just, I think 4.5 years ago, I moved to the UK because I was offered a global role. But I started my role with UCB in the States, particularly in Atlanta. So I was in Atlanta for a couple of years, working with the organization and and again, still doing what I do best, which is again, working with people and driving engagement. Thank you.
Wow, that's really an interesting journey. And you said you've lived in like 25 countries. You just love to change location, or was it based on the job you had to move around?
Back then it was a lot volunteer. So volunteer was I was working, so I would travel to a particular country, it might be India or somewhere, be there 2 months to 3 months depending on what, work with the young people. We're probably putting together a conference, a seminar, or a development experience, and again get to understand the people, get to work with the young people there, connect with families, understand the things that drive essentially cultures in those areas and communities, and then eventually we would have the start and the end of the event itself, and then obviously then we'll close out, and then obviously at the end of that event I had to move back to Nigeria and again continue my my role, my journey, or what I was doing till then another one opened up. So that was essentially, it was more of a volunteer life. I was literally building my experiential journey, particularly in this, because I never went to school to study HR or people management or anything. I got that all from an experiential point of view.
Wow, this is really interesting. This is really interesting. And you mentioned that you fell in love with UCB. Yeah, you fell in love with UCB. From a diversity point of view, I can see that you're well traveled and you have interacted with a lot of different people with their different cultures and all that. I want you to talk a little bit from that perspective, why you chose UCB.
I think to be candid, it was UCB and a range of companies. There was DHL then, so I was also kind of buying to get into a company like DHL. There was a company called or a company called Education First as well. There was Unilever. There was a couple of companies that were one of the uniqueness that ISEC had was it was also more like it was an organization that had ties to this multi-global organizations that you if you had actually developed yourself or developed your experience in ISEC, you got a shot at some of these companies through an international traineeship. And the idea is you do a 1-year traineeship and then you get retained. So again, the idea is because of that experience that I built up in ISEC, there were a couple of companies that I was looking at because I had known or I heard what those companies were doing. I saw that they had a global reach, which was, check in some of my lists. They had that, okay, when you think of the exposure that I was looking for, because I think at some point I felt like I wanted to move beyond Nigeria and just expand what I could do essentially in those contexts. So I mean UCB offered that, so did DHL, so did a couple of other companies that I was vying. But then obviously I went through the experience. UCB came through. They liked me. I liked what they did particularly. I thought for me, yeah, I had a love for medicine in the past, but then when I saw medicine from another perspective, where you were bringing in technology to kind of start looking at how you want to improve the lives of patients, I think it kind of made a bit more meaning and sense for me, and that kind of got me a bit excited to kind of join this kind of company and say, where can we, where can our relationship get to? So there.
Wow, thank you so much. So please let's go to Imole. Can you tell us more about your role at Babylon Health, and how did you get working there?
Well, thank you. And I think there was one part that Dapo mentioned that I think we have in common. I initially wanted to study medicine, but I guess I didn't take it so far as to get admission into a university to start at all. But I wanted to study medicine. But before that, my background was mostly, starting off my career, I started off in design, but of course, building a company alongside, which was called Pazotenji at the time. We ran that for about 5 years. I was mostly in charge of, building up the experience and the whole user-facing part of all of our products, which was super interesting at the time. I did that, and then of course last year I moved to the UK as a UK global talent, which also allows me to kind of like move here first, and then I could figure out what I want to do with my life. Do I want to, get a job or start a business again or things like that? But I wanted to get a job, and one of the key reasons was because all my career, I've not really worked in a company that has been like, really big or a scale up that is not just, a startup or has really built up. And for all of the offers that I got around, I think January this year, thereabout, that I got the offers, all of the offers that I got, about 5 companies thereabout, Babylon it sort of like stood out for me. One, because where I had a background in education, which was always, there's this social feel to the way I actually really wanted to do things. I just don't want to do stuff, but I also wanted to actually have like an impact. And for all of those companies, Babylon was like number one. It was in health. It was really doing some really good stuff. Not just good stuff, but cool stuff that we're using technology to ensure that a lot more people have access to it. And of course, the vision of the company, was mostly, to make healthcare accessible and affordable to everyone on the face of the planet. I really loved that. Fell in love with that. That's one of those reasons. And I think I went through the company to also see if there has been any Nigerian whatsoever, or any person that has actually worked at the company. And I think I saw one person, right, on LinkedIn who had actually worked there as well. And then my manager, who was very involved in my my recruitment and all, was actually a very good person. Is Austrian, and he really made me feel welcome, even through the recruitment process. Not like the other managers in the other companies didn't try, but it's just something really warm and receptive about him. But ultimately, I really wanted to work in a company that has started from somewhere very small, and then I've grown to be a very big company in like 5, 6, 7 years thereabout. I wanted to see how that structure is, how the reorganizations would really work. I really wanted to experience that from a whole new perspective, and then from like very, very core product perspective as well. And that was really it. And so for all of those things, the company actually checked the box for me. And I decided to join Babylon. And then of course the company actually also offered some very good perks, which anyone would really like. So yeah, those are the reasons in short that made me join Babylon. Yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting. I was surprised to hear that you actually went to check to see if there were other Nigerians there and all. I really thought from the employee perspective that that wouldn't matter so much, but obviously, for you to have
Yeah. That was, it wasn't supposed to be a deciding factor because I wouldn't really care. In fact, at the moment in my team, I think that there's just a few of us. I think on the product side of things, there are probably like hundreds of people, and there's just a few of us that are blacks. Maybe if I can count, maybe 4 or 5, whatever. But that the company made it so I don't really feel like in my immediate team I'm the only black person. I don't normally feel like I'm black. I try to not, I don't know. They don't make me feel that way, I guess. It's been 6 months of me staying in the company, and they don't make me feel that way. And I think for me, it's mostly about what am I bringing to the table, right? Who am I, and things like that. I think I have an identity as a black person, and that nobody can take it away from me. And every other person has been so warm and receptive. So I feel that's super cool. I think, yeah. So yeah, even though I had Nigerians, even though now I still have a couple of Nigerians in the company, we get to talk, but it's not company related stuff. It's just other things that is not, company related stuff. Yeah.
Okay, from the way you're describing your work environment, it sounds to me like it's very welcoming, like you said, and very inclusive. So would you mind maybe practically describing the kind of work culture that is there? Or if you don't want to go too much in details, like what kind of workplace culture would you consider to be greatly diverse and inclusive?
I think that a workplace culture that is diverse and inclusive will be the one that everyone, regardless of your background, I don't know, your religion, your race, your education, your gender, your sexuality, you have a say, especially for those of us who are like in the product side of things, in how the products shape up to be. And I think that really, really matters. You are not just there, you are not just being brought into the company because you're a black person, or you are female, or that you are, choir or something like that. That you are brought in because of what you know how to do. But then the company is also conscious of the fact that they wanted a well-rounded product. They wanted a well-rounded company, a place where everyone is represented, a truly global company. And so that is what I found at Babylon, at least so far. And so I feel that is the hallmark of like a very sort of diverse company, where you see majorities and minorities, like they are all represented almost at all levels, right? And I think that really matters. Yes, maybe, there's still a lot of, I wouldn't say that Babylon or has like gotten it right 100%, but there's a lot of room for improvement. And I think even from our own side, those of us who are minorities, I think going all the way to challenge all of those, I don't know, stereotypes and things like that will also ensure that maybe in another 4, 5, 6, 7 years, we would also find a lot of Black people at those very top levels in those companies. I mean, look at Dapo. I see that he's also really, rising within the ranks in that company. And for someone like me, or someone who is back in Nigeria at the moment, if he goes through UCB's and sees someone like Dapo, he would be sure that, no, this is the kind of place that I would like to work, and that I have a chance to actually get all the way. Yes, it wouldn't be all easy or rosy for him to get to that level, but it's possible, and he has shown it, right? So yeah, pretty much what I say.
Thank you, Imole. So Dapo, I would like to hear from you. I'm sure every other person would like to hear from you. How would you describe the culture in the workplace that how would you describe a workplace culture that is really diverse and inclusive? Like what was there that helped you to rise so much to the top?
I think Imole really covered a lot of the points, to be very candid. For me, you'll find a lot of companies that actually talk. Yeah, they have all of this slogan, and then you see all this report that comes out that they kind of improve their diversity index or whatever you want to call it, and they have these figures to it. But then when you look at it, okay, maybe they ended up employing some minorities at some lower level roles, and then that in court they're kind of filling the quota. So for me, I think for me it's actually walking the talk. So a lot of companies talk is cheap, right? You could actually do that a lot and put that on your print or all of that. But then again, when you get through the company and you think of, in terms of those representations and the contributions that they make, for example, in idea creation or in actually, operations or in strategic planning and things like that, do those minorities actually have, that space and the consistency that it's happening on a day to day, not just in one team, but when you look across the organization, you see that come up in different teams and in different ways, shapes, and forms. I think that's the one bit that I would say. And I think again, all due respect, like Imole also said, we when you get here, you probably recognize that they've moved or these companies have moved, yes, but then obviously, is there more they can do? Yes. And I think for us as individuals is that we continually challenge that status quo by really contributions, by what we do, and by how we show up. And I think that's the one piece for me. The other piece is obviously balancing representation. As much as I want to know that a company is inclusive, you know, I ask, how many people are, queer, and they can actually own up to that, and they can, and they can show up and say, this is my sexual orientation, and it's okay. So again, that balancing in representation is also very, very important. Diversity and inclusive, but then okay, you look at their workforce, and you can literally count the number of Black people or Asian minorities that you find there. That's also like a very big call out for me. And I think again, it's that whole being able to kind of bring perspectives. And I think perspectives again is also kind of relative to, now you also see there's a male female bit where, in some countries you look at the leadership, the top executive, and then the next level, and and then you probably see one or two women, or and then you're asking the question, where exactly is this going? So for me, it's a combination of those things, because for me, particularly when you have this diversity or this inclusive mindset going through, you see that whole innovation flow, right? People are bringing different perspectives, and in a lot of cases, it's not like the uniformity of one perspective makes sense. It's kind of you mixing up these perspectives to really create something that is truly unique, truly global, truly inclusive, that still fulfills the need that the company is trying to create, or the value that the company is trying to create for its customers. So yeah, those are some of the core bits, but I think again, pretty much Imole really covered it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dapo. I agree with you that getting different perspectives would actually help any company that wants to really make an impact globally do it well and do it more effectively. Now, you both mentioned something that I want us to talk about. Most companies are increasingly prioritizing diversity, but certainly not at the detriment of high skill and expertise. So what strategies do you think companies can adopt to source highly skilled and reliable talents in underrepresented communities?
Do you want to take a stab at that, Imole, or should I kick that
Yeah,
up?
I could try, and then I'll hand it over to you. For me, I think that intentionality is key. Just like what you just said. Is intentionality is key about going all out. But it's not just that. Like for instance, now if a company is saying, "Oh, we actually want to like increase inclusivity and and all that diversity in the company and all," it has to be something that they would have to do. An example would be that going into the minority communities that are that have like minorities, and then going all that to maybe colleges that have minorities, universities that have minorities, making sure that there's maybe if there's a I don't know a job fair or something like that, and intentionally recruiting from those companies, bringing them through the ranks, and really letting them grow through the company. That will be something. Also, for instance, partnering with a company like Decagon, for instance, in other countries, and ensuring that this, for instance, Babylon is in Rwanda, and we have like people who are doing fantastic stuff in those places. Companies could have like a hub, for instance, in Nigeria, or partner with Decagon and say, oh, particularly we want Black developers, people from minority backgrounds, and groom them, and they would be working with our other colleagues from all across the world and things like that. These are things that companies could do. Also, ensuring that, like, for instance, what I did looking through LinkedIn to search for if there's a Nigerian in the company and things like that. If, for instance, you are looking to hire someone who is from a minority background, female or anything, Blacks, whatever, you could ensure that in your interview panel, for instance, that there are these folks who are also represented in those panels. These people feel a lot more at home with it, and then they see that, okay, I have people who look like me, feels like Liv, and they're actually really having a say in this company, for them to actually even be interviewing me and things like that. So for me, I feel like there's a whole lot of like strategies, but key about it would be that the company being very intentional about it. And yes, they don't just want to fill up the space with someone as a minority, but they want someone that also would come in and do well. For instance, Decagon says that that's like 0.5% of everyone that actually applied got in. That means these are like the top guys. So even though we are looking for like diverse people, a company could partner with Decagon and say, well, they can be rest assured that they're getting like the best out of the hires that they will be getting, and they probably don't have to bring those talents to whatever country that they are operating from. They could actually still have them work remotely, and then they would still be contributing to the organization and still work with these very diverse people from all across the world. I will hand over to Dapo.
Yeah, and I think again, Imole still, has kind of done the justice to this. So, but I, my reflection around that is, again, that intentionality, as Imole said, is really like key. The company has to set an intention, and I think this comes from when you think of the strategic business imperatives of those companies, what exactly do they want to achieve? That becomes a pillar. I think being diverse actually should be a core pillar, particularly across countries, or across companies. Sorry. What I also kind of wanted to say is that, from a talent, first is you create that mindset or that whole strategic imperative. But then when you think of it from talent acquisition, getting your talent, yes, there is that bit where you want to go into some countries where you want to intentionally, you look at your company and you feel that you want representations from Blacks. Yes, you kind of set up hubs across Africa, you go to Asia, and you go to all those minority communities, and also kind of start looking at what exactly you could do. You probably even set up mentoring programs where you go in there, you kind of, it's more like you're taking the business case studies that you have, you're going back to those environments, and you're harnessing the rawness of the creativity that they have, where you're presenting these case studies and people are actually using the resources, the thoughts, the fresh energy that they have in actually creating sustainable solutions to the case studies. And this is where you can actually start developing a pipeline. Then you probably want to then create maybe a program. You have the likes of Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, and all of those companies now having to go and do some recruitment drives across universities across Africa, which is great. One core thing though, so there's that whole bit of setting hubs and going there, developing, having like a track of where you're developing people in a pipeline. You're then creating an opportunity for them to be part of your company, and they can move down here or create hubs there where they work with you. But then for me, the other piece that I've also seen is that, particularly from an HR standpoint, because I work very closely with HR, is you see this whole JDs, right? Job descriptions are kind of well tailored, well written, and then you look at job descriptions, they're looking for the keywords, bam, bam, bam. You don't have the keywords, they're screening you out because you don't have the experience. I think we're getting to a point where we start looking at, where exactly is the trade-off of experience versus potential, right? You're looking at someone who you could tell from the CV that from the experiences that they have on the CV, there is something there, but then obviously they've not probably gotten the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years experience that you're looking for, that you've probably seen an experienced person. You could tell that that person who is probably not, hasn't gotten that experience, is really dying and waiting for an opportunity. And if you give them, you really would never get anything more than that motivation. And that is what you exactly need. So I think we need to start looking at reverse engineering the kind of mindset we take into when we think of CVs and when we think of experiences and when we think of potentials. How do we blend it? So I'm not taking away the place of experience, because I think it's very important. But I think I've seen teams now starting to blend that. You recruit for some roles, you really want experience, right? But then for some roles, you really recognize that there is that raw potential. How do you harness that? Because then when you match those two, I think that is really critical, particularly for teams and things like that. So again, this is an ongoing topic, which I think I think it's not going to end there, because I want also to change a bit of the mindset where Africa becomes a place where, oh, because you want to fill your diversity quota, then you need to go set up something there. I think no. I think it's totally different. It's a different mindset and perspective. It's that there is a lot of talent, and you want to kind of understand those talents. You want to kind of bring them to a platform where then it's a level playing field with talents from, for example, Western Europe, where obviously they've gone through, a well-rounded form of education versus the one that we go through, where we go through strikes or no strikes and things like that. So I think for me, it's just a lot going on there, and I think that there is a lot to be explored.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dapo. There's really a lot to be explored, trying to get people who do not have so much experiences, but they have great potentials, and then giving them the opportunity to, showcase their potentials and even learn. You mentioned something about mentorship, which is very, 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 very key. Even though people won't get to grow and get to acquire so much skills that will make them efficient in such roles. Yeah, so another thing I wanted to talk about is this. There are some industries that suffer from not having a diverse professional talent pipeline. For example, engineering, there is an underrepresentation of women, not necessarily because engineering companies now do not want to hire women, but most likely because we actually do not have a lot of women pursuing a career in engineering. I studied civil engineering, and I remember at university, I was in a class of over 60 students and we're only 3 ladies. In that case and some other similar cases, what can be done? Like, could you share some tips to help companies that are operating in industries that are lacking diverse professionals in their talent pipeline? Let's start with Imole.
For me, I think that, for instance, I think what you just said is something that quite resonates with me, because my wife, she's a cybersecurity engineer and she works here in London, but all her career, she's always been like the only female, that kind of thing. And one of the key things that I've been discussing with that lately is, how do we get more women to actually join you, so that you don't feel like you are the only woman? You're always the only woman working amidst several men. And she felt like this. So for me, I feel one of the things that could happen, and this might not be like part of it, but it's just one of the things that I feel could happen, is if there are females in any of any engineering role in any of those companies, getting them to actively I don't know, having a webinar like this, for instance, trying to get a lot more of them to encourage more women to actually, be in technology. Companies also sponsoring companies like Decagon that are going out to actually recruit and train, technology talent, and actually doing that exclusively for, the minorities, female, for instance. That will go a long way. Also, making sure that not just because, just like what we're saying, not just because we actually want to encourage talent, or we want to encourage diversity, for when women actually get through the pipeline, making sure that there are more of those women are being asked to refer their friends or people within their circle, when there are openings in the company. That will encourage more, because if a female engineer, for instance, is more likely to bring in a female friend to actually come into that, or a female data scientist and things like that, that would actually bring in more and more of this. And this also applies to, like, people who are like Blacks or choir, any of those, or any of the minorities, if you ask them to actually bring in like referrals, people that they know, they will most likely bring in people like themselves, which will also increase these people, within the pipeline and things like that. So I think those are like, what I could think of off my head at the moment. Dapo, I don't know.
Yeah, again, I think you nailed a lot of points there. I think there is that. So sometimes when you were speaking, Leslie, I was kind of thinking actually maybe, and with all due respect again to our culture and all of that, I thought again maybe that whole mindset of actually women in engineering was a bit of a cultural stereotype where, okay, again, no disrespect to any culture or for back to our forefathers or whatever, but then there was that whole piece of you're going to university study for 4 or 5 years, that's too long. You probably you want to start thinking of getting married and things like that. I think probably some of that came from there. But then obviously, when you come to this westernized world and all of that, you see a bit of that same. So obviously, it couldn't have just been about the whole married context and culture, but there's a bit of some other context to it here as well. So that kind of just quickly kind of set me back when you were speaking and I was reflecting. But in my mind, I think there's still a very big, massive awareness that needs to happen, and that awareness can come, or depending on the culture or depending on the locality that you're dealing with. There is that culture of going to school how many years, but then imagine if, for example, there are programs in Nigeria set up by, again, multinationals or not necessarily multinational companies that are very invested, for example, in seeing women in engineering or tech, setting that up, and you go into families and say, hey, your daughter can actually get a scholarship 5 years in particularly to start, to get trained or to get developed, particularly in technology or in engineering. You can imagine that, because then there is that whole context of, okay, there's poverty, but then seeing that there are programs that actually encourages, or as Imole has mentioned, sponsoring the likes of yourselves to really help actually build platforms like that brings in more female gender to kind of actually contribute to this space. I think that's the one bit that I feel that there's a massive awareness piece that, and I think again, it goes to intentions, because if a company really means what they say, then you want to really go down deep and understand what exactly the problem is and start putting up a structure that at least solves some of those problems. I think for me, it's also, there's a bit around, opportunities, as Imole had said. There, you find in companies where there are, for example, one of the things I've been a bit really impressed with, not that we've gotten there yet, women in leadership. So you go to different companies right now, you have that awareness around women in leadership, women in leadership, women in leadership, even though there is still a lot to be done. But then again, when you think of the awareness, it's now something of a way where you see when you walk into a boardroom and there's no woman, there's an issue. People feel that people are looking at, oh, one woman, okay, fine. I mean, you could tell, right? I'm impressed with the movement around that. I think we can do more, but I'm thinking again is, how do we create more of that momentum, particularly across board being, high level leadership, lower level leadership, even, entry levels and things like that. And for me, again, is where reaching out, as Imole has said, there is something we call employee resource groups, where you find employees with similar passion, similar, ideas and objectives. They come together and they're kind of working around strategies that help the company develop, or platforms that actually improves what the topic. So if there is there is diversity and inclusion, for example, in my company, there's women in leadership. And when I look at the women in leadership employee resource groups, they actually have made this most significant stride, more so because it became a very big topic that people are talking with. So again, it goes down to intentions. It goes down to companies walking the talk. It goes down to, if you want to do this, the ideas are out there. I don't think there's shortage of ideas. It's just you putting your money where your mouth is.
Wow. Thank you, Dapo. Thank you, Imole. Yeah, it really starts with being intentional, because there's a lot that could be done, all the creating of awareness, and then even encouraging these people by sponsoring them, or even, letting them know that they can actually move over if they need to, or you can allow them to work remotely, because I know this relocation thing can be too, too stretching for some people. So encouraging remote work and all of that can help. So we're going to go on a few minutes break. We want to show you some of our client testimonials, and then we'll come back briefly and debunk some of the myths around diversity.
Okay.
Thank you.
Decagon.
I'm Isaac Byrne, Senior Front-End Developer with Vertex in Austin. I've worked on a lot of development projects with a lot of developers, both contract and full-time employees, and I'm happy to tell you what a pleasure it is to work with Tiga Oke of Decagon. As a member of the team, Tiga is what we like to call plug and play. He came with a lot of experience and we got him onboarded quickly, which is saying a lot because the project he's working on for a Fortune Global 500 company has a very complex onboarding process. I can pretty much send anything Tiga's way and he figures it out quickly without needing a lot of guidance or help, which is great. I can honestly say Tiga is exactly what we're looking for in our team members.
Decagon.
Hi, my name is Ikechi. I'm the founder of Tribal, a messaging app for Pan-African commerce. We were introduced to the Decagon team in the middle of a pandemic, really trying to find some quality mobile engineers last summer. And we were blessed to be introduced to both Joseph Amakri and Chidi Ogo, who helped us not only with building out our UI, but actually pushing our mobile app into its beta phase and bringing on our first 100 customers. Throughout this journey, Decagon has been very supportive in helping us get through our mission, build our product, and get it out to market. And I would definitely recommend leveraging their engineering team and technical support. We appreciate everything that Decagon has done and excited to continue working and building with them in future.
Decagon.
All right, welcome back, everybody. So moving on to the second round of discussion, we'll try to be faster on this one. So, Dapo, I'd like to get your opinion. They say that diversity is not as important in engineering because skill matters most. Can you talk on that?
I think that that for me sounds like a fallacy. It's a fallacy, it's not fact, because for me, again, it's the concept of diversity has nothing to do with skills. I think the concept of diversity is where people are bringing experiences and bringing perspectives based on what they have been through or what they have gone through, where they have lived, the kind of environment they have actually they came from, and then bring it and then bringing that through with their skills. Then that's where you see diversity. So again, it has nothing to do with skill. Skill is skill. You could actually put people in the room, 100 people, and then make them go through a course or something, again, blend their learning, ensure that they are all on board. But again, the idea behind diversity is how they apply that. How does someone, for example, who grew up in Shomolu apply an idea versus someone who was born and bred up in, Baker Street somewhere in London, right? You could tell that the experience how they approach a solution or problem would definitely be different. And that's something that you cannot buy with, skill. Sorry, again, skill is, you get that everywhere.
Wow, nice. You can't just you can't lock people in a room and force them to have a particular experience per se, but you can actually lock people in a room and get them to go through a course and acquire some kind of skill. So it's actually very important, not just the skill. I like the way you separated it. I have actually not really thought about it like that. Like you completely separated skill from diversity, looking at the purpose of each of them. Thank you so much. So let me read out the next question for Imole. Okay, women and minority groups are not as good in engineering and leadership.
I think that. Yeah, I think that is also not true. Women are one of the best people gender that I've worked with. I think that we need, if there's anything that we need at this time, I think across the world, is more women in leadership and in engineering. For instance, in my team, the engineering manager is a female, and she's probably the best developer that I've met with in my the last since I've been working. She's actually really good, not just because she's a very fantastic engineer, but that she's a very fantastic leader as well. And not just leading, but also leading from an engineering perspective as well. I think there's anything we need to encourage more women to join in. And I think this is one of those things that we are talking about. My wife, on the other hand, she's she reports directly to the chief security officer of our company, and she only just got to the UK, like, I don't know, we are just about 10 months here. And that's how big the women get to be. Our boss is always every day saying, I'm grateful. I recruited you. Please tell me if there's anything that is making you want to feel like you want to leave this company. Please always let me know. That's how good she is. Because at times I'm on my own call, or I see her just handling things, and there's a whole lot of people that she's handling, and I'm just wondering, wait, I'm actually living with this person. Like, even me as a man, I'm still struggling with it. But that's just on my own anecdotal evidences to it. But ultimately, women are the oil that is needed for any company to any company's engine to actually really, really work. And I think that they bring a lot of diversity to things. They bring that warmth, that empathy to every single thing. And I think that is like super important. They bring skill, like the highest level of skill. And I don't know about this, but I think that every single person here probably will agree with me that women, whenever they want to do something, they do it really well. They go all the way in design, in product management. Some of the best product managers that I've worked with are women. The best engineers that I've seen to work with are engineers, they are women. And so I don't think that is true in any way. If there's anything we need to, even we men have to actually learn from them in the way they do it, despite the fact that they have so many other things going on, they still put in so much and get the best out of it. And so, yeah, pretty much, I think we should encourage more women instead. Yeah.
Thank you, Mole. I totally agree with you. Yeah. Have to. well, that's just the truth, because also I'm trying to be careful so I don't sound biased, but being a woman, you're just wired to handle different things at the same time and still be normal. So I feel that's that's inborn character of a woman, just makes her do better in things that has to be management and even leadership. Okay, so I would like to hear the both of you on this one. The City of London is already diverse enough, so companies do not need to deliberately structure any diversity or inclusion strategy. That's what.
Okay, so that statement for me, it's City of London is diverse enough. I challenge that because, again, when you say diverse enough, in terms of people that are actually having those in tech, when you think of the jobs in tech, when you think of the roles in tech that people have, do we have enough people, or blacks or minorities, who are actually taking those roles? No, because then it goes, no disrespect of any job or whatever going to a white person, or again, I respect white people and things like that, but then again, the question for me is that diverse enough? The short answer is no. Imole said something about him working in his company, and there are 5 to 10 people that are blacks in a population of 100, right? Put that into perspective. Is the City of London diverse enough? No, it's not. So that's my short answer to it. I feel like, again, we can still do more. There's a lot more that we can do, particularly when you think of roles that are providing value to an economy. And that's where I'm coming from. We can look at the population and say there's a lot of minorities in the population. Again, I challenge that still, but when it comes to really the jobs, when it comes to really the roles, when it comes to tech, as the tech industry, I think there's a lot we can do. And I think there's again, we've talked about some of the strategies and some ideas that we can actually build bring up to really start, building that ecosystem, if we call it that.
Thank you, Dapo. Imole, would you want to add something?
Yep, I would also add to that, and I think Dapo was spot on that. I would also like to add to the fact that, yes, if we look at the number of Black people currently in, I think if I use my company as an example, we are still nowhere for someone to say that, oh, we have like enough. And that's just using the Blacks. If we look at it from the angle of gender, female, it's still not enough, especially from the engineering perspective. It's still not enough. And if you look at it from like sexuality and things like that, I think a lot more people still needs to be better represented in that angle as well. And so, but if I go back to the Black, there's so much to still need to be done. And I think also from the angle of the fact that there's I think more and more Black people still needs to come into tech, or even in more companies and things like that. There's still so less of us there. And I think it's also from like a, I don't know, cultural perspective or things like that. For instance, I remember when I got to the UK, my mom, and this is a very funny story. My mom, who is just trying to look out for her son, told me that she has a secondary school hold mate who has been in London all this while. I should call him up. I called him up and I told him that, oh, I'm in tech and I'm currently looking for a job and things like that. It was like, what? You cannot get a job in all those fancy offices. It's not possible. You should come and see me. I will get you a security job. That is what people like us can do. What school did you go? I said, Lautech or Gomosho. He said, who knows that kind of school? You cannot get a job in this. I said, but sir. He said, no, it's not possible. You come and see me tomorrow, okay? Don't argue with me. I said, okay, sir. That's the kind of thing. And so if I am not sure of who I am or what I have or the kind of skill set that I have, I would have gone for that. And just imagine how many people have actually fallen for that kind of thing. So we need to orientate a lot of like people from the minority groups that they could actually do these things. That includes women, we Blacks, brown people, things like that, so that we can see that you have the brain, you have the ability to actually do all these things. And so, yeah, we are not there yet. A lot more sensitization, just like what Dapo said, a lot more sensitization still needs to be done. And then, of course, a lot of us, like what Dapo is currently doing at BCG, like a lot of us still need to attain that high, leadership roles and then speak out a lot more, such that more people can see that this is actually really possible. Like someone like me who went to school in Ogbomoso could end up, at the leadership level in a company, a global company, like Babylon or any other company, as case may be. And so it's doable as well. And so there's still a lot more that needs to be done. Babylon and Decagon also started this journey as well. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you, Imole. Thank you. So we'll be taking a 1-minute break, and then we'll be back for the Q&A session. So please, if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat, or there's a Q&A box here, so you can just type it in there and we'll treat your questions as we come back.
Decagon is bridging the talent gap in the global software engineering market. Technical recruiters can now have their time to hire and get the talent they need in a few clicks, including hard-to-find senior engineers. Through our merit-based training program, we also produce world-class software engineers, some who now work with leading technology companies in the US, Europe, and Africa. From full-stack engineers to specialists in Node, React, Golang, Java, iOS, Android, C#, Python.
I'm an Android engineer.
And I'm an iOS developer.
I'm an Android developer. I'm in the iOS stack.
The next generation of leading African engineers are Deca devs.
All right, so welcome back. Let me see. Do we have questions? Okay, I can see a hand up, but could you please rather just type your question in the Q&A? Okay, we have one question coming. It says, in what ways has has your diverse background contributed to the growth of your company? This question is coming from Treasure. So maybe she wants to hear the both of you talk about it. Imole, I need to go first.
Okay. I think that's a very good question. Thank you for asking that. Well, for me, it's been 6 months of trying to bring the diversity, should I call it juice, to the company. First thing is for me to even get a lot more people to understand what it means to come from my own background. That's one. I think that the most important thing I always think about whenever it's money, like a friend of mine about me would say, like, every single day you wake up is an opportunity to solve problems. But I also have it at the back of my mind that I am going to this company to represent Nigeria, and I'm representing like Black people as well. And so I have to give my best. And so if we are coming from that, I know that, so giving my best means that I'm bringing my perspective, my own way of solving problems. Like, it might not be adequate at times. At times I get feedbacks that say that is not good enough. And at times it's really, really good. And then they say, okay, that's a way to look at these things, and it makes sense. And so for me, I think that the first thing is making sure that these companies would be willing and able, interested in hiring a lot more people that looks like me. That is very important. Another thing is, of course, the product that we are building. For instance, like I said, my company is in Africa, one of the African countries as well. And so if there is, I've not had the chance to work on anything that has to do with that aspect, but if there is anything whatsoever that needs to be done in that aspect and has to do with the way we look at, for instance, we use artificial intelligence, we need to ensure that it works for every single person. It works for every single person. And if I am based on that, if I have ever had the chance, I know that it's someone like me that my input in that kind of thing will actually go a long way, right? And so, yeah, these are things that I think about every single time. There's, whether we like it or not, there's what we call bias in the way artificially intelligent systems actually handle things that has to do with like Black people. There are issues about that, right? And so, but that's like on the different, and it's not as though we have that. But then if that really exists, then companies are actually looking to actually solve that as well. And so people like us are probably one of those people that will actually get to work on those kind of systems to ensure that it works better for people of color across the world. And there are several other examples like that. But yeah, I'm still really, really excited about all of the things that I'm still going to bring to the table when it comes to like diversity and inclusion. In Babylon and any other company that I'll be working. Dapo, over to you.
Yeah. I again, fully in support of everything you've said, Imole. I think for me, it's been a lot of, and I think my earlier years. So I think it's about 6.5 to 7 years now that I've started working with this company from the US, and then I moved here. I think for me, the key part, as Imole said, is first is the legacy I'm giving, the legacy I'm laying. The legacy for me is, one is I don't ever want you to regret working for a Nigerian. There's a lot of stereotypes out there about Nigerians being shady, the Nigerian prince and all of that syndrome, blah, blah. Again, the fact that when you get to work with me or when you get to interact with me or when we get to work together on a project, number one is I wanted to promise that first is that in terms of, drive and commitment, there's none other like me. So again, it often feels like everyone gets to say that Dapo is entirely motivated, but that motivation comes from my background, comes from the fact that I came a lot from nothing into a particular world where, if shit goes to fan now, I don't have I live alone here. My family is in Nigeria, it's back home. So there's nothing here for me and things like that. So again, is that legacy. And I think it drives me a lot. It gives me the fuel. And the legacy is also, Imole mentioned something subtly. I think if you check from an ambitious state between us, we have this goal that I want to hopefully be the CEO or CFO or whatever. The idea is that the bar is so high that we're going for that. We're not settling for, all right, just give me a very cool job with some cool money, I'm fine. No, I don't. That's not what I want. I want to actually get to the very top because I want to have a say and I want to contribute meaningfully. And I think that's also always where the drive is from, where we are and how that our backgrounds actually influence our drive. And that drive that's where you see commitment. And this was where when I was talking about CVs, experience versus potential, I think when they saw my CV the first time, I didn't think I had the experience. Yeah, maybe I had some of the experience by traveling around and working in communities, blah. But I thought what was more there was the potential. And for me, that potential is being driven always by your background, by the experiences that have shaped you. And I think that's what matters.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Dapo. Thank you, Imole. So we have another question here that is to Imole, but then I actually want you to generalize it because I'm sure we have some people here that are looking to be a valuable addition to their team, irrespective of their background, gender, or anything else that may make them feel that they are part of the minority group in their industry. What would be your advice to them? But before you go, let me just read the question. And it says, what do they really look for when recruiting for the role of a product designer? I have done like 2 interviews with foreign companies and got to stage 2 or 3, but later turned down. So looking at it from a broader view, talking to like everyone on this call who wants to grow, get the opportunity that you've got, and also grow in their career, what would be your advice to them?
I would go. I think that Dapo will also be very, very interested in this question because he works a lot with HR. But from my own experience, going interviewing, so far, specifically, let me just speak about product design first. But I think mostly what companies want to see, and I think in Nigeria, we have talent, but there's still this, it's almost always in this raw form, almost always. So you need to go the extra mile to convince people that in as much as you have this talent, you are also not just going to be this talent, but it's not useful, right? You want to ensure that your talent is going to be useful or at least teachable. That is very important. So you need to go the extra mile of not just showing that I'm a talent, but also showing what you can do. For instance, on the design side of things, for a typical designer in Nigeria, one of the things you think of is the fact that you probably will need a design tool all day and just be, designing away. It's not going to be that way. They're expecting you to think. And then another thing that happens is that you want to show your proactiveness. What are the things that you've actually done? How do you think about it from like top to bottom? For instance, now, one of the things that I enjoyed telling interviewers when I was interviewing at the time was that I'm this type of person that can zoom in to a problem and zoom out at the same time, right? So see it from a very high level and see it from a very small level, at a very tiny level, the detailed one. And that way, it allows me to have a very holistic view of the problem, and then I can solve it much better. Also, ability to work with others. And if you cannot display the fact that you've really worked well with people in the past, this is going to be a problem because see, and then communication is also very important. I just have to say this again. I got one of the things that I felt, I thought I'm this person that can speak English, like I can speak English very well. And it is now that I realize that speaking English is different from actually communicating. Like there's speaking English and there's speaking English, right? Like, so there are 2 different things. So communication is like super key, like listening, active listening, all those kind of things. So those are the key things that they will look out for before even your skill, because anybody can learn how to code or design or whatever. But you see all these key soft skills, they are not going to discount it at all. And you have to be able to demonstrate it. And it's not just enough saying, oh, I have good listening skills. I have good communication skills, and so take me like that. No. So you need to find active ways. And of course, that's a topic for another day. Active way, or how exactly are you going to demonstrate these things? And I think this cut across almost every role as well. So yeah, that's just a little I can say about Dio. Sorry, Dapo.
Actually, I'm very, my second name is Dio, by the way.
Oh,
so you're fine to applies. I'll take a quick stab at that. I think Imole covers everything, but I think again, and I'll say this because this is what I've had a lot of experiences with interviews. I conduct interviews now with my company. I conduct interviews on behalf of some other companies as a favor, as because I'm probably connected with some other guys who run some of other companies. But I think again, interviews are again, first is you've probably sent a CV. If you've gotten the chance to be able to design a CV, that is great, meaning you've been able to communicate a lot through CV. So if you cannot do that, for a lot of people say, I'm not selected, That's on CV. CV is your first entry point, right? If you make it through CV, then the next thing is how can you explain, how can you communicate what's on the CV in terms of your real life experiences? And I think again, it's you sometimes, and Imole said something about our experiences in Nigeria might be really crude and raw. It's always not refined. And I think again, what you need to do is really take a step back and really shape the experience. Frankly, sometimes you don't need to describe all of the crudeness. Sometimes it's just, again, being able to explain a process. And that process might be, I had to go to Shomolu to buy the spare part, and then I had to transport and find some lorries to move the spare. No, they don't need all of that. The idea is that you could manage the logistics of actually moving the product from point A to point B. Cut out away all the bullshit that you needed to explain down there. So that's a bit of being able to communicate, the experience. That's the first thing. But again, every job has a set of behaviors that they want to see. You can code, so can 50 other people that applied. So what makes you different? What makes you, the fact is, coding is, again, you go on the system and you do your, whatever you want to do, right? But the point is, how do you bring the human element to it? The working together with others, the checking with your stakeholders at every point to check if, one, expectations are being met, two, if there's feedback, if, three, the experience that they have, how exactly is that experience going to shape that stage of that development? And this is where, you cannot buy this, because again, this is something that you need to kind of a bit step back, think through, and build, I say build a case or build a story for what you want to share. And I think that is very, very critical for any kind of job, any kind of interview, any kind of role. And again, envisioning the end to end. What is the start and what is the end? And what does that look like? And be able to communicate that in 10 minutes or 15 minutes, which is the duration of an interview, with questions.
Thank you, Dapo, for that. Also, thank you to Imole. We have one more question. I think this should be our last question. Seeing that I think someone is already thinking of how to bring this home. She said, how can we nurture kids in Africa to pick interest in tech from infancy? So I don't know who wants to go first.
That's quite, it's a very good question, but I don't know. But I feel that now I think it's mostly about, signing them up. I don't know. I don't have a child yet, so I don't know. But signing them up to code, to all these boot camps. And for instance, I think over the summer break, for instance, there are like all these, tech related boot camp for kids and things like that. Signing them up for it. There's this period in a child's life that they are so curious about everything, and so putting all this technology in front of them at that very early stage, I think would also actually go a long way in sparking their interest. But I don't know, Dapo, you might want to...
It's nurturing intuition. Your kid wants to take a PlayStation and play, or take whatever and play, and then next thing you start beating them and saying, hey, stop, go and read your books. No, they don't do it that way anymore. Books don't cut it anymore. It's giving them the space. It's nurturing that intuition. They pick up a screwdriver, they want to kind of unscrew your remote control. Sorry, you're up for buying another remote control, right? But that's what people in the Western world, they will let them destroy it, right? They know that they will buy another one, because the point is you're feeding that kid's curiosity. Here, unfortunately, sorry, when I say here, in Nigeria, unfortunately, with all due respect to our parents and people, you bring out the cane and you beat the child because they destroyed, damaged the remote. I think again, and sometimes our realities work against us, particularly in this kind of situations. But I think again, it's starting to nurture, and then you've got a lot of code clubs, like Imole has said right now, that are opening up, particularly for kids during or after school hours, and also during holidays. Again, is feeding this intuition, giving them the space to kind of nurture that mindset. And again, that's how you do it. But then again, not beating kids when they get very curious. I think again, that's the biggest disservice somehow, I think sometimes, that our culture does on us, is you cannot look at your parents in the eye and tell them you're lying, you're rude, right? But here they do it easily.
Yep.
Yeah.
And to add to that, someone asked a question around how can they be able to recruit very good talents such as yourself and things like that. And I will just quickly add a couple of things. Work with a company like Decagon. Make sure that recruiters that you're working with also have this diverse background. I was asking my wife earlier, I said, while you were looking for a job, did you get any female, tell me the statistics of like female versus male recruiters that reach out to you, Black versus, other races that reach out to you, and how did you feel about, when you had, anyone that had your kind of similar background reaching out to you for, these roles and things like that? And then she said, yeah, well, I think I am a bit more receptive when it's like, female recruiter. But although I really don't really care, but when it's female, it feels a bit more closer to me and things like that. So maybe, companies actually being more intentional about, making sure that they're like the recruiters that are working with are also diverse in their background. That will also help. I remember, I had this female Black lady that was always, on my neck, like, hey, do this, do that. There's this company, you're a talent, you must get this and things like that. That really help. And of course, also, being very intentional about, getting people within the company to recruit. Like if you have people from the minorities in your company, let them to also, recommend other folk that like maybe they are friends or within their circle to the company. That will also help. And of course, in Africa, in Nigeria specifically, there's a lot of talent. And talk to Decagon, they will definitely hook you up. And so yeah.
Thank you, Mole. I've really pulled out that here being intentional. Being intentional is key. And then just to add a little to the question, talking about how can we nurture kids in Africa to pick interest in tech from infancy. Sensitization of the parents will be very important here, because the kids are still on their own. They don't know what they want. They don't know how they want what they want. But yeah, the parents need to know the importance of these things. They need to know that your children don't have to be software engineers, but these skills actually will help them build abilities, these problem-solving abilities, in being able to think about things critically. That is a life skill. So exposing them to tech would actually help them build some personal skills that they can use anywhere. They don't have to be software engineers. They don't have to work in any tech company and all of that. And then allowing them to use certain devices, buying the devices for them. Yes, they would destroy them, but allow them to destroy them and let them also put them through the test or through the task of fixing those things. Like, okay, you destroyed it, fine, fix it. In the course of thinking about such things, it's, it feeds their curiosity. So there's a lot to do on the parent side this time around. Sensitize them from schools, maybe school forums and all of that. So that should be all. We've come to the end of this interesting session. I want to say thank you again all for joining. Please follow us. Follow Decagon and on all our social media channels. We're on Instagram, we're on YouTube, we're also on LinkedIn. And then a big thank you to Imole and Dapo. Thank you. It was really insightful and really an interesting session here talking with you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Again, to share the stage also with Imole. It's great. Didn't get the chance to meet you before now, but I think after this call, I'm going to be adding you up, and I'm definitely going to be connecting with you at some times in London or somewhere. But then again, it's a pleasure to kind of share experiences here. And my last word is just, again, don't dream. Again, dream. Keep dreaming, but then keep working towards that dream. And nothing good comes easy. Nothing good comes easy, and that's just a simple, brutal truth. But it's just it. But keep dreaming, don't stop dreaming. But then also work towards that, and recognize that you're not gonna get anything handed to you. You probably need to work for it, and that's what Nigeria helped us with.
Oh yeah. Thank
you
you
everyone
Dapo.
for joining. Thank you, Dapo.
Right.
Yes, definitely looking forward to meeting with you afterwards. And thank you very much, Leslie. This is a very good avenue to share. And thank you, everyone that joined.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. Bye.